Shakespeare wrote, "Music is the food of love." But today, many people say that increasingly, music is giving them moral indigestion. Rock music, that is. Listen to the words. Critics say the message often played over and over on the radio is pure sex. Many parents do not want their children to hear it. Good morning, I'm Charlie Rose in Washington. Welcome to the CBS News Night Watch. This morning, a Nightmatch debate on what's becoming known around the country as porno rock. Our resolution: some rock music is becoming increasingly pornographic, offensive, and detrimental to children. The rock industry should clean up its act or face legislative reforms. Arguing in favor of the resolution, writer and mother of 3 children, Candy Stroud.
I have 3 children, and I believe that they should be protected from violent and pornographic rock, and that it is the responsibility of the music industry to reform itself.
Arguing against the resolution, singer, songwriter, one of the more unorthodox performers of rock and roll, and the father of 4 children, Frank Zappa.
Frogwash, I say. Censorship is bad for you, and sex is good for you.
We'll hear more from our debaters in just a few moments, and a little later in the broadcast, we'll give our studio audience a chance to have their say. First, a look at the latest news, and for that, we go to the CBS News. Children about music. In the 50s, Elvis Presley was banned from some television shows because of his gyrating hips. In the 60s, the Beatles were seen as a bad influence. Their hair was just too long. Today, the storm is brewing once again. Lark McCarthy explains.
Songs on the airwaves these days are filled with more than suggestion. Many parents are upset over rock lyrics that graphically describe sex, sodomy, and violence. It's a new explicitness.
It is like going to a porno movie and seeing everything, only it's a porno hearing session, and the kids are hearing everything.
Mary Elizabeth Gore says she was shocked at what she was hearing. Gore is the mother of 4 and the wife of a United States senator. She's joined with other influential women to form the Parents Music Resource Center.
Well, my 11-year-old likes Prince. However, on the album Purple Rain, there is a song called Darling Nikki, which deals with the subject of masturbation, and that is in the lyrics. I did not feel that was appropriate for my then 10-year-old child to have purchased.
Like Gore's group, the National PTA is asking record companies to voluntarily label records, tapes, and cassettes that may be considered obscene. While the parents' groups are calling for voluntary restraint, some in the industry fear encroachment on the First Amendment.
I'm very concerned that we're talking about some form of censorship here, which I absolutely do not believe in.
A recent hit of Sheena Easton's called Sugar Walls about sexual arousal was yanked from several radio stations.
The decision was, well, let's test it, see what happens. We put it on.
Blue is the music director for Z100, one of the top radio stations in the New York City area. His programming philosophy: if it's selling, he'll play it, unless he gets complaints.
We received a number of complaints and letters from parents who felt that the record should not be played. So therefore, we felt it just wasn't worth playing it.
It's me, Freddie Snakeskin, here on KROQ-FM.
K-Rock in Pasadena is known in the trade as a progressive rock station.
We're not out here to sell sex. We're out here to play what our audience likes.
The National Association of Broadcasters has stepped into the controversy.
We're trying to tell the owners and the managers of these various broadcast properties to be sensitive to the music that their program directors and disc jockeys were playing.
If there is to be censorship, then it should be in the home, and that's where it should start, and that's where it should end.
But the kids will tell you the parents can't be everywhere.
I don't think the mother can stop the child from listening to the radio or watching TV.
Hey, why should they, put a limit to what I want to listen to? It's a free country. We can do whatever we want to do.
My parents, don't like me listening to the music, but I explained to them that it's just normal music.
So-called porn rock is expected to be the subject of congressional hearings this fall. Lark McCarthy, CBS News, Washington.
Are rock lyrics too suggestive? And if they are, what should be done about it? Here's our Nightmatch resolution again. Resolved, some rock music is becoming increasingly pornographic, offensive, and detrimental to children. The rock industry should clean up its act or face legislative reforms. Debating in favor of the resolution, Candy Stroud, author and mother of three. Debating against the resolution is Frank Zappa, a veteran rock singer and songwriter and father of four. Ms. Stroud, your opening statement.
Charlie, rock music has always had an extremely potent force and impact in the lives of teenagers, but never more so than today. The average teenager today listens to between 4 and 6 hours of rock music a day. That's over 11,000 hours of rock music listened to between the 7th and 12th grades alone. And the listening audience is getting younger all the time. Now elementary school children, preteens, and teenagers as well are looking to rock stars as role models and teachers, imitating their behavior, singing their songs, and imitating their fashion. And the lessons that they're learning from these rock stars is that casual sex, masturbation, incest, violent rape are all acceptable, even desirable forms of behavior. Don't let anybody tell you that the music of the 60s and 70s is the same as the music of the 80s. Times have changed, the barriers have fallen. Innuendo has given way to the explicit, graphic, violent, pornographic. In the 50s, Elvis Presley sang, "I want you, I need you, I love you," or "Come along and be my teddy bear." Now, Morris Day and the Times sings, "If the kid can't make you come, nobody can. I want to get you off, baby. What does it take to get you off?" In the 50s, Little Richard sang, "Good golly, Miss Molly, you sure know how to ball." Now Prince sings, "I met a girl named Nikki. I guess you could say she was a sex fiend. I met her in a hotel lobby masturbating with a magazine." And Sheena Easton sings, "Sugar Walls." The Stones in the 60s sang "Let's Spend the Night Together," which was edited seriously for the Ed Sullivan Show. But today, Wasp, Blackie Lawless, the lead singer of Wasp, can appear on stage wearing a buzzsaw blade between his thighs, and which he uses to attack a woman in a mock rape. And he wears on his bikini underwear a sign which says, "I F blank blank K like a beast." While I abhor censorship, and I believe that banning creativity is wrong, I do think that the time has come for the music industry to exercise its social responsibility and police itself.
Your opening statement, Mr. Zappa.
I do not speak for the music industry, nor would they wish me to. I do not approve of most of what is being manufactured for entertainment, but I do not feel that it is my place or anyone else's place to keep a type of entertainment that people desire from them. I don't know very much about Candy Stroud or her cause. I find it fascinating. I find that I've just read this little reprint of her Newsweek thing just before I came over here, and I feel sorry for her that anybody could respond that way to matters pertaining to sex. And I don't really have a statement to make about this because I need to know more about what it is you're really trying to say, because it's not very clear. You've quoted from songs, but you don't say exactly what it is about these quotations that are so offensive to you. I need to ask you some questions in order to proceed.
Let me jump in if you'd like, Frank, and give her a minute and a half to make that point or less, and then another time for you to respond after she clarifies.
Good.
Go ahead, Candy.
Well, to answer your question, Frank, I think that sex is healthy, but it's not an animal act. And that the message that rock stars are singing today is that love equals sex and sex equals love, that love is purely recreational, it's a thing that is fun, there are no commitments, no responsibilities, and no consequences. As Tina Turner sings, "What's love got to do with it? Love is only a second-hand emotion." That is a message that is being preached over and over again to teenagers at a time when they're forming their value systems and their morals. It's not just the mainstream rock music, but it's rock music that is in the heavy metal industry, for example, where you have songs that deal with forcing a woman to have oral sex at gunpoint, as in Judas Priest on the album Defenders of the Faith, "Eat Me Alive," in which he sings, "Sounds like an animal, panting to the beat, groan in the pleasure zone, gasping from the heat, gut-wrenching frenzy that deranges every joint. I'm going to force you at gunpoint to eat me alive." this kind of music that is being played over and over again for teenagers and is being purchased. This album that I'm talking about, Defenders of the Faith, is a double platinum album. That means it's been bought by over 2 million teenagers. And that is not the kind of message that teenagers should be receiving when they're forming their values and characters.
Okay, I can see why some of this stuff rubs you the wrong way, because you have a problem with sex. The lyrics that you're talking about contain some words that seem to trigger this peculiar response. Could we narrow those down and talk about those words? Because you're talking here about rating different types of bad rock music, completely ignoring what goes on in country and western, which also has sexual lyrics. You're picking on rock. You're ignoring the fact that many classical pieces have texts which are pornographic. For example, Carmina Burana, which was taken from a Latin piece that was supposed to have been pornographic. Do you want to censor this? Is that going to offend somebody?
No, I sure don't. I've sung Carmina Burana. It's one of my favorite pieces. Okay. Country music, however, is not mainstream. Prince's album, for example, Purple Rain and Darling Nikki, has sold over 10 million copies. That's a lot of copies sold to teenagers. So has his album Dirty Minds, in which he talks about incest and the joys of that. I see there's nothing wrong with sex, but there is something wrong with preaching incest, masturbation, and a casual attitude towards sex to teenagers.
What's wrong with masturbation?
Let me pick this time for a break, and we'll be right back because we're up against the clock. We'll pick up with Mr. Zappa's point. Stay with us. Nightmatch continues. Frank Zappa, let me come back and let you define your own sort of position on this, which is, it seems at first glance, an absolute First Amendment defense of these kinds of lyrics.
I'm a constitutional fundamentalist.
Okay.
I like the Constitution. I like it the way it is. I don't want to have it rewritten for me by people in Washington.
Okay, let me just stay with the question then. Do the same lyrics that offend Ms. Stroud offend you? No, whether you want them banned or not.
No, the lyrics don't offend me. The way the material is presented and the idea behind the material offends me. The crassness of the business offends me. But I have no problem with any kind of lyrics that deal with matters of physical activity.
Do you believe that any of those lyrics that she pointed to are detrimental to your children, her children, of the age group that she's talked about?
Absolutely not. And let me point out one thing. This could be a really great publicity stunt, and I'm sure the media eats it up, because you get to have a term, porno rock. It sounds terrific. You're going to get a lot of mileage out of it. But the real fact is this. Every authoritarian regime likes to get this little hook going for them. You tell people sex equals sin. And now I'm going to save you from sex. And that will save you from sin. And then you get to go to heaven. And we did it for you. So send in your check today. That's what this stuff is.
Candace Stroud.
Love is pure, love is gentle, love is kind, love is not crude, love is not lewd, love is not Prince singing, if your man ain't no good, come on over to my neighborhood, jump in the sack, and I'll jack you off. That is not the way the children should learn about love, and especially when their parents don't even know what they're listening to.
Love is not sex. Sex is an activity that has nothing to do with love. Sex is a physical activity. You do not have to love someone or even yourself in order to do sex.
Love and sex implies responsibility, implies commitment, and implies consequence. And today, when we have the highest teenage pregnancy rate in the world, and 50% of all teenagers losing their virginity by the time they're 18, there is something going on in the country that is wrong. And whether or not it's coming from rock music or movies or the advertising that they're seeing, is coming from a number of factors in our society, and I'm convinced that rock music is one of them.
We will be back. Our debaters, Frank Zappa and Candace Stroud. The question has to do with rock music lyrics. Should they be banned? Should there be some legislative reform? Or should the rock industry simply accept the First Amendment and have its performers provide the audience whatever they are responding to? We'll be back. as Nightmatch continues. Stay with us. Rock music is, they believe, those lyrics have a detrimental effect on their children. Here is an excerpt from an interview by Phyllis George on the CBS Morning News with a psychiatrist about the impact of rock music and the lyrics.
Well, actually, the research has all been done with college students. There are 3 separate studies now available. All of those show that college students become more desensitized to violence when they see, say, a video like by the Rolling Stones where they sing about chopping up a woman, putting her pieces in the refrigerator, and taking her out and eating her.
It's pretty gruesome, I must say.
Yeah, it is pretty gruesome. That when, you know, of course, the heavy metal trend, I see it in my own psychiatric practice. Young people come in my practice, they're into heavy metal, maybe have the barbed wire earrings and the spiked jewelry, and almost always they have, you know, having serious problems with antisocial behavior with their parents, with the school, with the police. They really get into the subculture. These are their heroes, and when their heroes are singing, making violence acceptable, it does have definitely a harmful effect.
That's Dr. Thomas Radecki with the National Coalition on Television Violence on the CBS Morning News. Coming back to the question of the detrimental impact, are young people going to be exposed to those kinds of lyrics and that kind of conversation, regardless of whether it is in or out of rock music, in all kinds of media, all kinds of publications, and does not, as others have argued, the reform and the management or the instruction begin at home?
Instruction does begin at home, Charlie. The problem is that with rock music, it is such an extraordinarily potent force in the life of a teenager, and they're listening to so many hours a day, and the problem has been that parents have not known the lyrics that their children have been listening to. There has been no parental control, and there's been no restriction whatsoever in the movie industry. A kid can walk into a store at the age of 9 years old or 10 years old and buy an album that deals with forcing a woman to have oral sex at gunpoint, or an album like the problem is they'll go and they'll buy a hit song like Jungle Love by Morris Day and the Time. What they don't know when they get the album home is they flip it over and they've got If the Kid Can't Make You Come, Nobody Can, which gives you 5 entire minutes of conversation that is only heard in sexual intercourse. It makes the whole process very, very lewd.
I think masturbation is really good, and I think that more people in America should do it. And first of all, it would help your teenage pregnancy rate.
But
and also,
while that's a good line, Frank, that's not the issue here.
Well, I
whether
think it is for her because she has a masturbation fixation. She is seized upon the idea of masturbation. Is like, if we stop that, then our children will be safe. Come on, give me a break. This is really, you know the word for what this is. It starts with a bull and it ends with something else. This is baloney. This is a publicity stunt, Mr. Rose.
A publicity stunt by
people like this, because she is not the only one who is believing in this sort of thing. It works. You come out, anybody who says, we're going to stop pornography. First of all, look at what pornography is. It exists because there's a market for it. You know why the market is there? Because people have trouble becoming aroused. Pornography is supposed to arouse you. Americans need to be aroused because many of them are physically incapable of being aroused.
I got
That's
1
why
minute
Dr.
before we go
Ruth
against the
is
break.
on there.
Candy Stroud.
I think masturbation is a healthy thing, but I don't think that masturbation should be taught on a record. I also think that what we're really talking about, Charlie, is a consumer issue, that it is not appropriate for a young child of the age of 10 or 11 or 12 to be able to go in without any parental consent or any guidance to buy anything that they please, whether or not it has to do with Satanism or violent sex or rape, whatever, that, like the movie industry, that the music industry should police itself and have a rating system so that parents have a handle on the information that the children are getting.
In 30 seconds, can you deal with the issue of whether this is a promotional stunt by the people involved or, in fact, is a legitimate reflection of concern by a whole cross-section of parents?
If this were a publicity stunt, I don't think the Justice Department would have had hearings on the connection between pornography and rock music and sexual exploitation. If this were a publicity stunt, I don't think that the Commerce Committee would be seriously concerned in having hearings in the fall on pornographic rock music.
Nightmatch continues. Frank Zappa, Candy Stroud, stay with us. Music that some say all too often is filled with talk of sex and violence. Here's our resolution again. Some rock music is becoming increasingly pornographic, offensive, and detrimental to children. The rock industry should clean up its act or face legislative reforms. Our debaters are writer Candy Stroud and rock singer Frank Zappa. Do you find that the lyrics are in any way, regardless of whether you do or do not agree with the sexuality expressed, detrimental to children?
Let me tell you how it is detrimental to children. Here is a place that I think we can agree, okay? Here is the detriment to a child's mind. You have stated that they listen to too many hours of music. Do you know why they do? Because children in the United States today are marginally literate. They don't read. They get their information from watching television and from listening to records, okay? So you have a channel into the imagination, into the memory banks of a whole generation of kids who don't read. They don't get any thrill out of reading. So you have a problem when the music industry seems to conspire to pump whatever kind of bilge the traffic will bear down that channel. I resent that, whether it contains sex or contains references to values that are insincere, or just the reason why the songs were made. These are not songs that mean something to somebody. These are pieces of product. We're not talking about defending art here.
First of all, Charlie, I'd like to say that I really feel that Mr. Zappa is making mockery of a very serious issue. And I think that as an artist, he has a serious responsibility, as does Prince, as has Madonna, as has Motley Crue, as has Wasp, to protect the children of this country. I really feel that if the rock musicians can get together to write an uplifting song such as We Are the World to raise millions of dollars for kids in Africa who are starving, that they also can protect the children of this country from hearing songs that endorse and glorify violent sex or pornography.
How do you want them to protect the children of this country?
I feel that it should be a voluntary thing on the part of the entire music industry. No different from the movie industry in terms of a rating system. That they can, the music industry has already agreed to do this. One thing they're going to do is label albums so that there is consumer information on the album, so that a parent or a child knows what they are bringing home, what they are buying, and what they're going to be listening to, and there has to be cooperation from the parents, from the radio broadcasters themselves, and from the music store that sells these records. But there has to be voluntary compliance, just as there is with theaters and the movie industry.
So you don't want to see the record industry or the government say these kinds of lyrics cannot be recorded and cannot be sold in record stores?
Nobody's talking about censorship or banning anything.
Then what are we talking about? We're talking simply about a rating system?
We're talking about consumer information. It's a consumer. If cigarettes can be labeled, if movies can be rated, if food can be labeled, why can't a record that contains pornographic lyrics or lyrics that have to do with the occult, with teaching satanic rituals, or drug and alcohol?
I want to get some people involved in the audience. Do you have any problem with the labeling?
I was probably the first person to comply. In fact, I invented the labeling. These are some of the albums released by my company, okay? These albums this one contains material which is very, very beyond Prince in terms of graphic sex. This contains something that would probably drive some of those creatures on the hill crazy. It has a whole song with backwards lyrics on it. There's no telling what it says until you play it backwards. On these albums, I place a warning guarantee sticker, and it says, "This album contains material which a truly free society would neither fear nor suppress. In some socially retarded areas, religious fanatics and ultra-conservative political organizations violate your First Amendment rights by attempting to censor rock and roll albums. We feel that this is unconstitutional and un-American."
Okay, but she hasn't said she wants to censor. She says she just wants to label.
I'm reading my warning guarantee. This is the consumer information I put on my product. Let me finish what I'm saying. As an alternative to these government-supported programs designed to keep you docile and ignorant, Barking Pumpkin is pleased to provide stimulating digital audio entertainment for those of you who have outgrown the ordinary. The language and concepts contained herein are guaranteed not to cause eternal torment in the place where the guy with the horns and the pointed stick conducts his business.
Is the difference you'd make between the lyrics on a record and passages in a book simply that one is more, as Zappa said, kids aren't reading books, they're only listening to music? Is that the reason that the target is rock lyrics rather than pornography in books and magazines and other places?
Children do not read pornographic books. Children do listen to music, and music has a very dramatic effect. And pornographic music that is backed up by extremely graphic sound effects, such as bedroom effects and heavy panting and moaning and seriously graphic words have a much stronger effect on children than you don't even see it in a pornographic movie.
Back in a moment. Frank Zappa, Candy Stroud. Stay with us. Yes.
Yes. As a parent, I would like to ask Mr. Zappa if he would like to just leave his children go and pick out whatever they wanted. I don't listen to the albums myself, and when my children were teenagers, they would go in a store and bring home albums, and they made their own money, and they listened to whatever they wanted to. But I don't think many parents realize what is in the albums, and they don't realize what the children are seeing on TV and what the words are unless they go and read the album covers or go into the record stores.
Okay,
and
first of all, let me tell you, I have 4 children. They range in age from about 7 to almost 18, okay? And they all know about sex. They even make books for little children that show, in childlike form how sex works. So sex is not a mystery. I don't care what they listen to. Because if it's sex that you're worried about, they should understand that it's a biological function and not something to be used as a tool to keep them subjugated and make them docile by having somebody say, sex is bad and I'll save you from sex because sex is sin.
Okay, but let me jump in then. Suppose somebody stimulated by a book or a magazine or lyrics from a record album or anything else, because of that, because of some value system that they create from that, does some violence to your daughter. Mm-hmm. Does that change your attitude at all?
I think that the people who are the most at risk from having a value system create monsters that do violence to other people. The way I see it, some
of the lyrics talk about violence to other people, Frank. You know that.
I know that. But here's the thing about crimes and the way they're committed. Most of the violent crimes in the United States are committed by Christians. If you don't commit the crime, if you're not a Christian, when you commit the crime, when you go to prison, if you tell them you're born again, you get out sooner so you can commit another crime. That's a worry. Okay?
Mr. Zappa, as a born-again Christian, I am glad that you're very unorthodox because a lot of the lyrics are perverted sex. They're not normal. And maybe you don't realize that, but I think the parents would like to know that some of those things are not normal sexual relations.
But that doesn't mean that you have to do them. You should know about them. Information doesn't kill you.
Children don't know the difference.
Children learn the difference by receiving information, which they can store and sort with your help as a parent. If you don't let them know about this stuff, they'll grow up and be ignorant.
I would rather have them be ignorant of something.
Anybody who chooses to have their children be ignorant is making a mistake because then they can be victims. They have to know. They have to be shown an example. It's a parable, okay? You don't have to tell them to do it.
There is an improper way and there is a proper way to be taught about sex. It is not proper to listen to Motley Crue sing on an album, I'll either break her face or take down her legs, get my way at will, go for the throat, never let loose, going in for the kill. That is not the proper way for kids to learn about sex. Nor is Bitch's album, Be My Slave, where she sings, the whip is my toy, handcuffs are your joy, you hold me down, I'm screaming for more, when you tie me up and gag me. The way you give me pain, come on and drag me. That is not a proper way for children to be taught about sex.
Yes.
My question is, if you were to go about rating albums as you do movies, how would you do that in the correct way? Because I happen to think the way movies are rated is very sexist. And if you were to do records in the way, what would stop such sexism that they have with the movie rating system?
Well, I don't know about sexism in movie ratings, but I think that the ratings that the music industry is talking about would be to have a council, an independent council comprised of members of the music industry themselves, broadcasters and record distributors and executives of record companies, as well as members from the community, who would sit and listen to a great percentage of the albums that come out every year and would simply put a label on them, whether or not they were drug-oriented, sexually oriented, violent, or or oriented towards the occult, so that there would be something on the outside of the album, whether or not the lyrics are printed there, or the mark itself, that would give parents and the child something to go by so they would know what's inside.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I just don't think you could really just censor or
it's not
or
rate.
It's
just consumer information.
Like
Speak to the issue of a rating system.
Okay, let's see how untenable it is. Okay, because first of all, you're singling out one certain type of music. The world of music is very wide, and there's a lot of different kinds of music, and there's something that somebody could find objectionable anywhere. If you just start rating records as of today, what do you do about every record recorded since the beginning of the phonograph? Because there's got to be something over the last X number of years that's got to be offensive. How are you going to get rid of that?
Candy Stroud?
Well, the same way as you go into a movie store today and you pick a movie that was made in the 50s or 60s, it's not rated either. But you would have to start somewhere, and you'd have to start probably today.
What else? What's your other objections to the...
I object because I don't think that it's anybody's business what you consume. I don't think that giving them a foothold, and when I say them, I mean people who believe they're doing something wonderful in the name of God to protect the morals of the entire country. They have not been elected to do this. Nobody asked them to do it.
But you would be the first person to defend their right to do it. This is a democracy for these people to stand up, for people to legitimately feel that they have an interest to be protected.
Fine, they can feel that, but when they're not elected and they want to do something that affects somebody else's life, they want to enact legislation, they want to cause an event to happen. She can have her opinion. You can have your opinion. You have yours. But when you want to have legislation and you want to have something happen that affects everybody else's life, and you haven't been elected, it shouldn't be done.
All right, we now should go, before I run out of time, to closing arguments. Candy Stroud.
Well, children do not have permission to walk into a store and buy Penthouse magazine, and children under 17 do not have permission to go to a movie and see Deep Throat. Censorship will never find fertile ground in the United States, but there are warnings on cigarette labels. There are ratings on the movies. There are labels on food, and the liquor industry has voluntarily removed its ads from television because of the high rate of teenage carnage on the highways. I think it is time for the music industry to take a look at its product and to realize that there are congressional hearings coming up in the fall. If they don't do something about the music and the message that they're sending to children, Congress will.
Finally, summation.
Congress probably will do something about it because you can't trust them either. That's it.
That's it?
That's it.
Frank Zappa, Candy Stroud, I thank you for joining us for this night match. Thank members of the studio audience who have been here to share their own comments and their own questions. We thank you for joining us. Night Watch continues.